Arab CEO laughed when wife signed divorce papers. Until he discovered the fortune she was hiding from him. Finally free. Karim al-Zahrani's laughter echoed through the courtroom like a thunderclap of victory. He pushed the divorce papers across the polished mahogany table, his fingers adorned with an $80,000 Rolex sliding arrogantly over the document. Free from you and your American mediocrity. Elena Reyes remained silent across the table. 38 years old. Brown hair tied back in a simple bun. Calloused hands of someone who was never afraid of hard work. She held the Mont Blanc pen, the same one he had given her as a wedding gift 4 years ago, which would now sign their end. Karim leaned back in his chair, adjusting his Italian suit with that smile Elena once found charming. Now she saw only cruelty. At 42, he was CEO of Al-Zahrani Ventures, an $800 million investment conglomerate inherited from his father. A man who never built anything, he only inherited and learned to destroy. Your lawyer advised you well, he said in impeccable English with a slight Arabic accent, turning to Richard Foster, his 60-year-old lawyer with a reputation for never losing. She's signing without contest. Smart. At least in the end, she showed a little wisdom. Elena signed her name. Slowly. Each letter deliberate. Her lawyer, Patricia Hoffman, a 65-year-old woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen 1,000 legal battles, watched silently with an unreadable expression. Judge Sherman, a black man in his 50s with a 20-year career in Chicago family court, took the documents and began to read the terms. The room was completely silent, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. According to the terms presented by Mr. Al-Zahrani, the judge read, "The division of assets will be carried out according to the prenuptial agreement, in which Mrs. Reyes waives any claim to." Objection, Your Honor. Patricia stood up, her voice calm but firm. Karim rolled his eyes. Too late. She's already signed. I am not objecting to the terms of the divorce, Patricia continued, opening a black folder. I am correcting a factual inaccuracy in Mr. Al-Zahrani's documents. Richard Foster frowned. What inaccuracy? Patricia slid a thick envelope across the table. Your Honor, the documents list a residence on the Gold Coast, an apartment in Dubai, vehicles, and shares in the family business. All belonging to Mr. Al-Zahrani. Karim smiled. Correct. And according to the prenuptial agreement, she is not entitled to any of it. I agree, Patricia said calmly. The problem is that the documents don't mention anything that is hers. Karim's smile faltered. Hers? She has nothing. When we got married, she was a simple software engineer with an average salary. Everything we have was built with my money. Your ignorance. Patricia interrupted him. Your Honor, I would like to introduce Quantum Core Technologies, LLC, a company founded by Ms. Elena Reyes 9 years ago, when she was only 29, 5 years before she met Mr. Al-Zahrani. The blood drained from Karim's face. Quantum Core is a cybersecurity company specializing in government data protection. Ms. Reyes developed a proprietary encryption algorithm used by the Department of Defense, 3 foreign governments, and 17 of the largest Fortune 500 corporations. Elena watched Karim. For the first time in 4 years, she saw something she had never seen before: fear. The most recent valuation, Patricia announced, values Quantum Core at $380 million. Ms. Reyes owns 94% of the shares. The room was completely silent. Richard Foster picked up the documents with trembling hands, his eyes racing across the pages. That's impossible, Karim whispered. I managed our finances. I saw all the accounts. You saw what she allowed you to see, Patricia said. Quantum Core was never in the marital accounts because it was founded years before the marriage. Intellectual property created before marriage remains individual. Elena finally spoke. Her voice was low, but each word fell like a stone in still water. You thought I was just a mediocre engineer, Karim. You thought I worked for a company earning $80,000 a year. She leaned forward. I never said I worked for anyone. I said I worked in technology. The difference is subtle, but important. What Karim didn't know, what his elite lawyer didn't uncover, was that the woman he had underestimated for 4 years was not the victim he imagined. She was the architect of her own security, a woman who learned early on that strategic silence is worth more than 1,000 shouted words. And now, in that room where he had come to celebrate victory, Kareem discovered that he had slept for 4 years next to one of the richest women in Chicago. A woman who let him believe in his superiority while building invisible walls around everything that mattered. If you've ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were better than you, then you know how Elena felt. Stay tuned, because what happened next wasn't about money. It was about the price you pay when you confuse silence with weakness. 9 years earlier, Elena Reyes was 29 years old and had just done something that would change her life forever. Sitting in her small apartment in Austin, Texas, she stared at the computer screen displaying the confirmation, Quantum Core Technologies, LLC registration approved. It had cost her $800 of her savings and 3 months of sleepless nights studying corporate structures. Her father, Miguel Reyes, a retired mechanic who died when she was 28, had taught her something crucial before he passed away. "Mija," he said from his hospital bed, holding her hand with his calloused fingers. "In business, never show all your cards. Always keep an ace up your sleeve. Always." Elena had kept more than one ace. She had kept the entire deck. At age 25, working as a junior software engineer, she developed a revolutionary encryption algorithm during weekends and late nights. She didn't use company resources. She didn't use corporate equipment. Every line of code was written on her personal laptop, every test performed with her own infrastructure. Now, at age 29, with the company legally incorporated, the Department of Defense made its first approach with a $2.3 million contract. When she signed the second contract for $8.7 million at age 30, Elena kept everything strictly confidential, operating the company remotely, using virtual offices, meeting with clients under strict confidentiality agreements. To the outside world, Elena Reyes was just another competent engineer working in the technology industry. It was at age 34 that she met Kareem Al-Zarani at an investment conference in Chicago. He was magnetic, charming, with that confident air of men who have never known failure. He told stories about his family empire, about Dubai, about a world of luxury that Elena had never experienced. "You're different from the women I know," he said that first night, in a restaurant overlooking Lake Michigan. "There's a depth to you, an intelligence they don't have." Elena smiled but kept quiet about Quantum Core. Something in the way he talked about his companies, always emphasizing ownership and control, set off a quiet alarm in her mind. But she was lonely, tired of working alone. And he was intoxicating. They married after a year of turbulent courtship. Kareem insisted on a prenup. "It's just standard procedure for families like mine," he explained with a condescending smile. "It protects both of us." Elena signed without protest. The prenup protected his assets. It didn't mention anything about hers because Kareem never asked. He assumed she had nothing worth protecting. For the first 2 years, the marriage was a carefully maintained illusion. Elena continued to operate Quantum Core in absolute secrecy. She used a shared executive office when she needed face-to-face meetings. She kept separate bank accounts that Kareem never saw. She filed her taxes as married but with separate finances, perfectly legal. "Why do you still work?" Kareem would often ask, lying in his $40,000 king-size bed. "My money is enough for both of us." "I like to work," Elena would simply reply. And it was true. But not in the way he imagined. The mask began to slip in the 3rd year. Elena found messages on his phone. Nothing explicit, but clear enough. A woman named Isabel. Dinners, he said, were business meetings. Trips to Dubai where she wasn't invited. That's when Patricia Hoffman came into her life. They met at a networking event for women entrepreneurs. Patricia had 40 years of legal practice, specializing in protecting women's assets in high-risk marriages. When Elena cautiously mentioned her situation, Patricia didn't seem surprised. "How many rich men do you think do this?" Patricia asked, sipping wine in her discreet office in downtown Chicago. "They marry smart women, assume they're financially dependent, and then do whatever they want. Their mistake is the same, arrogance." "He doesn't even know about my company," Elena confessed. Patricia smiled. It wasn't a cheerful smile, but a strategic one. "Then you're already 3 steps ahead of him. Now let's make sure you stay 10 steps ahead." Over the next 2 years, as the marriage slowly fell apart, Elena and Patricia built invisible legal fortresses. They reinforced Quantum Core's corporate structure. They documented every penny she had invested before the marriage. They created impeccable paper trails proving that the company had never depended on marital resources. Kareem became more distant, more cruel. His words were knives wrapped in silk. "You should dress up more," he would say. "My partner's wives look like real women." Elena absorbed every insult in silence. Every condescending comment. Every moment he treated her like a disposable accessory. And while he slept satisfied with his own superiority, she reviewed contracts, fortified legal protections, and set the stage for a game he didn't even know he was playing. When Kareem finally asked for a divorce, with that victorious smile, thinking he was freeing her to be with Isabel while keeping his entire empire intact, Elena simply nodded. "All right," she said calmly. "Let's sign the papers." He thought she had given up, that she had finally accepted her place. What he didn't realize was that Elena Reyes never fought battles she couldn't win. And this battle? She had won it 3 years earlier, the moment she decided to protect what was hers before he even knew it existed. The transformation on Kareem's face was worth photographing. The arrogant smile melted like wax under intense heat, giving way to an expression of panic that he desperately tried to hide. "Your Honor," Richard Foster stood up abruptly, his voice laden with urgency. "I request a recess to review these documents. My client was not informed about." "Your client didn't ask," Patricia cut him off with surgical precision. During 4 years of marriage, Mr. Al-Zarani assumed complete control of the marital finances. At no point did he ask his wife about assets prior to the marriage. His failure to perform basic due diligence does not constitute concealment. Judge Sherman leafed through the documents with an increasingly serious expression. "Mr. Foster, your petition lists $9.2 million in assets as marital property. These documents show that your client owns a $380 million company, founded and operated completely separate from the marriage." Kareem finally found his voice, but it came out strangled. "Elena, this is ridiculous. You work from home. You make $80,000 a year." Elena stared at him with icy calm. "I make $80,000 as a base salary. It's enough for my personal expenses and to avoid raising suspicion. The rest, government contracts, corporate clients, technology licenses, goes to Quantum Core. It's always been that way. But I never saw any meetings, business trips, anything." "You saw what you chose to see," Elena replied. "Those afternoons with friends you ridiculed? Meetings with the Department of Defense? The online courses you called a waste of time? Presentations to Fortune 500 CEOs? You were so convinced of my insignificance that you never questioned anything." Patricia slid over another set of documents. "Your Honor, Mr. Al-Zarani attempted to include all intellectual property developed during the marriage in the petition. A vague term that could be interpreted as an attempt to claim work developed by Mrs. Reyes years before she met you." Richard Foster paled. "That's standard language." "It's predatory language," Patricia corrected him. Judge Sherman removed his glasses, cleaning them slowly. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 2 decades on the bench. "Mr. Al-Zarani, are you aware that your attorney has included a clause requesting access to all electronic devices and digital documents belonging to Ms. Reyes?" Kareem opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "That clause, combined with your attempt to claim intellectual property, suggests that you suspected your wife had undisclosed assets and were attempting to uncover them through the divorce proceedings for appropriation." "No, I didn't know." Kareem's voice emerged, sharp and desperate. "She hid everything." "She protected what was legally hers," the judge corrected coldly. "Prenuptial property does not require disclosure in Illinois. Mrs. Reyes did not violate any laws. You, however, attempted to use the judicial system for unauthorized access to private business property." The room spun around Kareem. He looked at Elena, really looked at her, for the first time in years. And he saw not the submissive wife he imagined he had tamed, but a woman who had been playing chess while he played checkers. "How could you?" he whispered, and for the first time there was something other than arrogance. There was genuine hurt. "I loved you. You gave me crumbs from your empire and expected eternal gratitude," Elena replied, her voice finally carrying the anger she had held for years. "You called me mediocre. You said I should dress better. You treated me like a disappointing ornament while I built an empire worth 4 times yours." The truth fell on the room like a guillotine. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, my client requests immediate approval of the divorce according to the terms she signed. Each party leaves with what they brought. Mr. Al-Zarani with his inherited $800 million. Ms. Reyes with her earned $380 million. The judge banged his gavel. Approved. This marriage is dissolved. Both parties retain their individual assets. Case closed. Kareem remained seated, stunned, as Elena stood up. She picked up her simple handbag, the same one he had mocked for not being designer, and walked toward the door. Elena, he called, his voice breaking. She stopped but did not turn around. You always knew, didn't you? That I was going to ask for a divorce. Isabel. Everything. 2 years ago, Elena confirmed calmly. When you started leaving your phone unlocked because you thought I was too ignorant to notice. And then she left, leaving Kareem Al-Zarani alone with the devastating realization that the man who thought he had everything had just lost the only thing that really mattered, the respect of an extraordinary woman he was too foolish to recognize. 6 months later, Elena Reyes sat in her new office on the 40th floor of a building in downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of Lake Michigan. The plaque on the door simply read, Elena Reyes, CEO, Quantum Core Technologies. No longer hidden. No longer silent. The company had grown 40% since the divorce. 2 new government contracts, a partnership with NASA, and a $520 million acquisition offer that she politely declined. Quantum Core was not for sale. It was her legacy, built with sweat, sleepless nights, and a determination that Kareem was never able to see. Patricia entered the office carrying a briefcase. You need to see this, she said, handing him a printed article. The Chicago Tribune headline read, Al-Zarani Empire Faces Crisis After Public Divorce. The article detailed how investors had begun to question Kareem's competence after the court revelation. How he had failed to identify a nearly $500 million company operating under his own roof. How his reputation as a shrewd investor had been shattered. Isabel left him, Patricia added casually. 3 weeks after the divorce. Apparently, she was interested in the billionaire CEO, not the publicly humiliated man. Elena looked at the article, expecting to feel satisfaction. But all she felt was a distant sadness, like the memory of pain that no longer hurts. He called me yesterday, Elena said softly. Patricia raised an eyebrow. And he asked to meet. Said he needed to talk to me. Against Patricia's advice, Elena agreed. They met at a discreet cafe in Lincoln Park, far from the prying eyes of Chicago high society. Kareem was different. The suit was still expensive, but he looked less comfortable in it. There were dark circles under his eyes. His hands, which used to gesture with imperial confidence, were still, almost nervous. Thank you for coming, he said when Elena sat down. She just nodded, waiting. I've spent the last 6 months trying to understand, he began, staring at the untouched coffee in front of him. How I could have been so blind. How I lived with you for 4 years and saw nothing. You saw what you wanted to see, Elena replied without cruelty. It was just a fact. I called you mediocre, he continued, his voice heavy with genuine shame. When you were 10 times the person I could ever be. You built something from nothing, with your own mind, your own hands. Me? I just inherited my father's empire and pretended it made me special. Elena watched the man in front of her. There was no more arrogance. Just the wreckage of an ego that had crumbled under the weight of its own delusion. Why are you telling me this, Kareem? He finally looked at her. Because you deserve to hear that I was wrong. About everything. You weren't invisible because you were insignificant. You were invisible because I was too arrogant to really look. What about Isabel? Elena asked, not out of jealousy, but out of curiosity. Kareem laughed bitterly. She taught me that there are people in this world who love what you have, not who you are. You already knew that. I had to lose everything to learn it. Elena took a sip of her coffee. You didn't lose everything, Kareem. You still have your company, your fortune. What you lost was your illusion of superiority. And maybe that's the most valuable thing you could have lost. He nodded slowly. I wanted you to know that. I'm trying to be different. To sell part of the company. To really learn the business, not just inherit the title. Maybe build something of my own. Elena got up to leave. Before she left, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Good luck, Karim." "Really?" Walking back to her car, Elena thought about her father. Miguel Reyes, who spent his entire life with grease under his fingernails and never earned more than $45,000 a year, but who taught his daughter the most valuable lesson: never let anyone else define your worth. She had quietly built an empire not because she was afraid to be seen, but because she understood that real power doesn't need an audience. That true success doesn't require external validation. That sometimes, the smartest strategy is to let others underestimate you while you build something they can never take away. Karim learned that inherited fortune is not the same as earned strength. That arrogance is paper armor against the truth. And that the woman he dismissed as mediocre was, in fact, extraordinary, not despite her silence, but because of her wisdom in choosing when to speak and when to observe. Years later, when young entrepreneurs asked Elena what her secret was, she always said the same thing: never confuse silence with weakness. And never let the noise of others drown out the sound of your own worth. If this story has inspired you, if you believe that true success is built in silence and revealed at the right moment, then subscribe to the channel. Because the world needs more people who understand that real power doesn't shout, it simply exists, unshakable, until the moment it decides to show itself. And when that happens, it changes everything.